Modern security teams face a brutal trade-off. On one hand, you have to comply with strict FedRAMP standards, which means retaining secure, audit-grade logs for up to 2 years. On the other hand, you have a finite budget. As modern infrastructure generates exploding volumes of telemetry, balancing these two realities becomes nearly impossible. This friction leads directly to alert fatigue and runaway SIEM bills. This chart shows data volume growing exponentially against a flat budget line. This happens because legacy platforms charge for raw ingestion. When verbose logs hit the system, costs immediately spike, even if those events are rarely used. Next, we see this issue compound as identical data packets flow from a single source into 3 separate redundant storage buckets. Teams frequently store duplicate telemetry simply because property-aware deduplication tools are missing. To stop the bleeding, teams often resort to lossy compression. But dropping telemetry data breaks forensic integrity and directly violates FedRAMP's strict tamper evidence expectations. It leaves the organization with a system that is incredibly expensive and completely non-compliant on ingest. This means the system indexes every single piece of telemetry data the exact moment it arrives at the platform. Looking at this system flow diagram, you can see 100% of incoming log data being forced through a narrow compute bottleneck before reaching long-term storage. Organizations pay premium, active compute costs for all of their data up front, even though most of it will only ever sit in passive storage to satisfy compliance auditors. Solving this requires an architecture capable of retaining every byte of data perfectly intact, without paying for active compute before an investigation actually begins. Sasquatch Labs developed a framework that corrects this flaw by deliberately uncoupling storage, indexing, and compute into distinct layers. The first step is lossless, schema-aware storage. An incoming block of raw telemetry data is compacted at ingestion, retaining every structural field. The algorithm identifies repeating properties and merges them, significantly shrinking the storage footprint while preserving every byte required for a FedRAMP audit. The second step is moving this compressed archive into a bring-your-own cloud, or BYOC, storage model. Storing data in your own infrastructure bypasses the massive margins and egress surcharges typically tacked on by SaaS vendors. Inside this isolated tenancy, data is locked down using write-once, read-many protocols. The system attaches cryptographic Merkle tree proofs, ensuring every log remains perfectly tamper-evident. This specific storage architecture establishes strict data sovereignty and forensic fidelity, maintaining FedRAMP authorization boundaries at a fraction of traditional storage costs. Storing the data securely is only half the equation. We also have to look at how security analysts actively query that archive during an incident. This is index on query. Raw, compressed data rests securely in a storage layer. An index layer only generates when an active query targets specific blocks. Built strictly on demand for an investigation, the temporary index dissolves once the query completes, leaving the archive untouched. Analysts and authorized AI modules interact with this data entirely through a read-only access layer. Behind the scenes, fine-grained retention policies ensure high-fidelity security events are kept longer than basic debug traces. By locking down archives and generating indexes exclusively on demand, the economics of observability change entirely. Compute spend matches exactly to your investigative needs. Moving a FedRAMP-authorized workload requires precise planning. This migration relies on a highly structured, phased approach rather than a simple overnight cutover. This timeline chart tracks the initial phases. After a compliance gap assessment, 2 parallel data streams, the legacy system and the new BYOC archive, run concurrently for 30 to 90 days. The streams reach a validation checkpoint, proving absolute parity in the query results between both systems. With parity proven, teams engage their FedRAMP assessor, execute a controlled cutover for all forward-looking data, and decommission the expensive legacy ingestion pipeline. Throughout this process, the system produces the exact concrete artifacts auditors require, from signed integrity attestations and access control lists to detailed system flow diagrams mapping the authorization boundaries. This deliberate methodology ensures that the organization's continuous monitoring capabilities and overall compliance posture remain fully intact during every step of the transition. The financial result of these architectural shifts is massive. Compressing data at ingestion removes per-event pricing, while the BYOC model eliminates managed service margins. We can see the impact in this side-by-side bar chart comparison. The towering left bar shows legacy SIEM costs driven by ingestion and SaaS premiums. The right bar shows the BYOC cost. It is up to 90% shorter, with the ingestion and premium segments removed completely. To map out your specific authorization boundaries and receive a custom, model-backed savings estimate for your environment, book a technical briefing with the compliance engineering team at Sasquatch Labs. By engineering a smarter observability architecture, you retain complete forensic fidelity and drastically reduce your SIEM bills. Strict FedRAMP compliance and operational cost efficiency can finally exist in the exact same system.